It is summertime in Europe. That means tennis season and a time for legends. And few of this sport's icons have lived through or made more history than Martina Navratilova. She won a record 9 Wimbledon singles titles, among a total of 59 Grand Slam titles over 3 decades at the top. But her journey before tennis is just as remarkable. Born in Czechoslovakia in the Soviet Union, she saw tanks roll in after the Prague Spring and dreamed of freedom. When she found it as an asylum seeker in America, her life was still shaped by the Cold War and secrecy.
I just felt that if I want to become number one, which I want to, but I couldn't do it under the circumstances at home.
The Czech authorities monitored her parents. American policies meant she felt she had to hide her sexuality. Navratilova never played by other people's rules. Today, she's a cancer survivor, a parent of adopted children, and more outspoken than ever on issues from trans rights to Trump's America. Now 68, she's looking back on the moments that made her the state of tennis today and the next chapter of an extraordinary life. Martina, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Very nice to see you. It's summertime in Europe. We are just weeks away from Wimbledon. Do you still get more than, was it nearly 50 years after you first saw that green grass? Do you still get a tingle of excitement when you see the grass of Wimbledon, which defines the summer for so many English people?
100%. Somebody asked me, my daughter. Emma just asked me the other day, are you going to Wimbledon? I'm like, duh. Been there every year since 73, except 2020 when it wasn't held. So I never missed one, yeah.
So after your last Wimbledon singles final, you famously plucked a little bit of grass.
I did.
From your final performance, your final match there.
Martina taking a bit of the centre court with her.
Whatever happened to that bit of grass?
Oh, it's in my jewellery case.
Really? You still got it?
I still got it.
You know, you look, if I may say, incredibly well, and we're going to talk about the extraordinary life you've had, in which you have been a survivor in many, many different ways. Not so long ago, you had cancer. How's your health right now?
It's all good, knock on wood. Yeah, all clear, and no side effects at all. Other than red wine still doesn't taste good.
That'd be the key,
so I've gone sideways towards tequila and vodka.
But not during the daytime?
Not during the daytime, definitely not. Yeah, so I'm lucky. The cure was hell, but the aftermath has been great. And I was lucky on that front because people can have lifelong issues. No salivary glands, the voice box can be affected, swallowing, so I need to chew my food a little bit better, but that's about it, so I'm good.
But this was the second time you had cancer. You had cancer once, I think it was breast cancer when you were 52, and then 13 years later it came back. But it came back in a big way, didn't it? I mean, just take us back to that moment when the oncologist said, yes, it's come back, and you know what, you got it in 2 places.
Well, it was... the way I found out, I went like this about something, and I'm like, this lymph node is a little bit bigger. And a couple of weeks later, it's still bigger, so...
That's literally how you found out?
Yeah. This was too big.
Mannerism.
This is too big. And, like the kid in Home Alone. And I'm like, and then it didn't get smaller. I thought it was from my vaccination that I just had for shingles. And called my doctor, and he says, and did a biopsy then. We got the results. And it's cancer, and it could be anywhere. We need to find out where it's coming from. It's just, it's in the node, but we need to find out where it's from. And it could be in your lungs, your liver, or your kidneys. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. So worst 3 days of my life, and then Monday morning, the oncologist calls. He says, well, it is HPV. It's 95% curable. It won't be pretty, and it's for sure just in your throat. But when they did the CT scan, exactly where the cancer is, my throat lit up where the tumor was, and then my right breast lit up as well. So I had 2 different cancers, completely unrelated, but they caught both early, only because I did this. It was hell. I lost 30 pounds in the 7 weeks of treatment because I had proton and chemo at the same time, and it just knocks you on your ass.
And what did that cancer teach you about mortality?
Well, yeah. As you know, I wore my emotions on the sleeve when I was playing.
Really?
I showed everything. I don't have a filter, much of one. I've learned. I've gotten better with the filter, but still. And But I didn't ever stressed about anything. But now I really don't stress. I blow up, but then I let go. And I think champions have to do that because we compartmentalize very well. So that's kind of, but that's how I am, always have been.
Where's that come from, do you think? Is that your childhood? Is that your upbringing?
I've kind of been that way. My mom also would, she would get upset, but then, very happy to be happy again. So she would let go pretty quickly. And I think I got that in my DNA. But so cancer taught me to really appreciate every day, which I was doing pretty much anyway. But most of all, do not sweat the small stuff. It's fixable.
You mentioned your mum. I want to just touch briefly on your family. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about your childhood, because a lot of people who know the champion Martina might not realise that your life in many ways reflected the great ideological battle of the 20th century. You went from communism to capitalism. And a lot of people like me read about communism, they read about the Soviet Union, they read about life there. They've never experienced it, they've never felt it. What do you remember of growing up in the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, a country that no longer exists, part of an empire that no longer exists? What was life like day to day?
Yeah, but my hometown is still the same. Still no traffic lights, still no stop signs.
Even now?
It's an idyllic childhood. I was just talking with my best friend that I've known since we were 3 years old in kindergarten. What a great childhood we had.
Did you not feel the oppression? Was there not... There was
yes, of course. But that's all we knew. So you kind of... live with it, because it is what it is. There's nothing you can change. We never thought communism would fall, that we would ever get away from the yoke of Soviet Union. Almost happened, but then, the Soviet tanks came in, the Warsaw Pact in '68. I was almost 12 years old and remember it like yesterday.
The invasion of Czechoslovakia by Soviet-led troops was an attempt to crush the so-called Prague Spring, a series of reforms aimed at liberalizing the communist country. Moscow feared it could weaken its grip on Eastern Europe, and 2,000 tanks and 500,000 men were sent into the country to reassert control.
What was that like when the tanks rolled in?
It's like, your life will never be the same. Just like when that second plane hit the tower in New York, I thought the first one was an accident, and when the second one, I'm like, we are cooked. This will change our lives forever, and that's what I felt back in August 21st, 1968, when the tanks rolled in. Our life will never be the same.
You threw stones at the tanks.
Well, we tried.
What did you know of the outside world while you were living under communism? What did you know of America and capitalism and freedom?
Well, you read, you watch movies, you see some movies. Bonanza was the big hit growing up on Saturday nights. And then I traveled. I went to West Germany when I was 13, and then I went to America when I was 16. So I kind of lived it. So I was lucky that I got out of the country, see the West. Most people don't.
What did you see in West Germany that made you think actually life outside might be better?
You know what was the biggest? What was color? People wore colorful outfits, particularly women, but even guys.
You still got a sense of that today?
So yeah, I'll sass it up when I can. And there was an American air base, a military base nearby. So there were these massive Oldsmobile and Cadillacs and Lincoln. When I saw for my first American car, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, life cannot be that bad when they're driving that.
By the time Navratilova had had her first taste of the West, she was already on the way to tennis stardom, having first stepped onto a court when she was just 6 years old. Within a few years, her startling talent was obvious and was soon being developed by her stepfather, who she always referred to as her dad. Her parents had divorced when she was 4. Her biological father died a few years later.
Do you think that your ambition, you talked about living under communism, but do you think your ambition was fired in any way, either by your parents' divorce or the death of your biological dad when you were 9? It's often a very strong connection between people losing parents early and feeling like they want to make something with their life.
No, I was already on my way, and I will only see my father maybe once a year when he come to visit, because it was a big trip from where he lived in the mountains, and didn't find out that he passed away until like a year after he died. My mom didn't tell me. She did not like bad news. I'll have that from her.
Are you glad she concealed the truth from you about why he died?
I don't think it would have made a difference. Initially, my mom told me that he died from cancer, and then only when I was like 25, she told me he died. He committed suicide. but because of a broken heart from this woman he was dating. But I don't think it would have made a difference. I had such a, my father was my father. My dad treated me like his own. I never saw a difference. If anything, he spent more time with me because I really wanted to play tennis.
But your dad asked you to visualize, which I find so inspiring, really. Visualize Wimbledon, visualize winning, visualize being in the grass. What was he like as a coach?
Very picky. It was
Very
all about
demanding?
technique. It was all about technique. He never had to ask me to do my best. I was always very eager, always very competitive with myself. But every shot he had something to say. And so then I was kind of hard on myself because he was hard on me in that he demanded perfection. And, that's really hard to get. But it always was like exaggerating what I did wrong. I'm like, I didn't do it that bad anyway. But he was always there.
By the age of 15, Navratilova was the national champion of Czechoslovakia, ranked number 2 in the country, and good enough to play on the international circuit. But to achieve the level of success that she craved, she needed her freedom. And it would come, but at a massive cost.
People who know you through the kind of glory days of your tennis career, which I really want to focus on in a moment, won't know about the extraordinary dilemma and decision that led to your going to America to pursue that career. And the night before you went, I just wonder if you could take us back to a walk that you went on with your dad. What was the subject of your conversation and what did he say to you? So you're 18.
I was almost 19. This is August 75. I was 18 and 10 months. And the federation wasn't going to let me go to the US Open.
The Czechs, that is.
Czech Federation, because you had to get the permission from the federation to leave the country. So you're at the hands of the government, and they said no, they won't let me go to play in the US Open. And finally they relented and said okay, just a week before. And that's when I knew that I couldn't come back because if they change their mind, I don't ever get out of the country again.
So it's a one-way ticket.
And so it was a one-way ticket. I talked to my dad. He says, well, if you decide to stay, don't come back, no matter what we say, because they'll be maybe telling us to tell you to come back. So don't believe us, and don't tell your mom. So I didn't.
It's worth just taking a moment to realize you're 18, getting a one-way ticket to America, away from communist Czechoslovakia, and your dad says, don't tell your mum because she's going to really not like the fact that you're going. That's a huge decision for an 18-year-old. And when you look back on that choice you make, you must have mixed emotions, pride, and also kind of can't believe you did it.
No, I'm more pissed off that I was forced to do it. That's the regret, that I was forced into doing it and never able to get that time back. I never knew when I would see my parents or if I would see them. If I would ever go back, etc. It was a one-way ticket. They couldn't come out, and I couldn't go back because then they would put me in prison. But at 18, you think everything's going to work out. I think at 30, I couldn't have made that same decision.
I just want to show you something. This is the video of you. You'll have seen this a few times. This is you announcing your defection.
Oh yeah, that was the press conference after.
Martina has been granted political asylum by the United States. I think the primary reasons for this, what she will tell you herself, is surely to enhance her tennis career. Right now, I think that the best thing to do is give it to Martina.
Oh, that's Jeannie Brinkman. Yeah, I remember her.
Why did I decide to do this?
Oh my God, my voice is so high.
Because I felt I didn't get enough opportunities to play as much tennis as I want under the Czech government. I had to ask every time if I can play this tournament, if I can play that tournament.
I've never seen this.
And,
You've never seen this?
Never seen
playing
it.
tennis, and I just felt that if I want to become number one, which I want to, that I couldn't do it under the circumstances at home.
Well, English was pretty good.
You've never seen this, thank you.
I've never seen that video. No.
I mean, that's one of the most famous videos in 20th century sport. I mean, you were there the first time, so I guess you experienced. How do you feel watching that now?
I remember the sweater I wore, but I had no idea it was going to be such a big deal.
It's such a big news story in America.
Well, yeah. The night before, the INS, Immigration Naturalization Service, that's where I went in Manhattan. That was the appointment. They said to my agent, Fred, come after hours. We don't want anybody to see Martina. We want to keep it under wraps. Don't say anything to anybody. So we get there like at 6 o'clock. We leave like at 10. I had to convince him I was not a communist spy. I just wanted to play tennis. But immediately they said, okay, we approve you. You know, next day I had my green card. But they said, don't say anything to anybody. I left there at 10 o'clock at night. The next morning it's in the paper. It was in the Washington Post. There was a little blurb. The tennis star asks for political asylum.
Who leaked it?
Well, somebody from the INS, obviously, you know. So that's when I had to go to Forest Hills to do the press conference to make it official. But it was leaked because they were trying to keep me safe.
So you're a political asylum seeker to America, and one thing that a lot of people don't realise is that at the height of the Cold War, this is all like stuff out of a John le Carré novel. I mean, you were literally looking around the court, weren't you, to see if there were men in trench coats, and you had to work out...
Something like that.
You laugh about it now, but you had to work out if they were American spies or Czech spies.
I just figured that they would not, you know, they were not going to kidnap me, take me back to Czechoslovakia, because what's the point? Yeah, I'm gone, so then I'll never come out, so... It wasn't worth the trouble. I think I just figured maybe I would, you know, play for a couple of years and then disappear.
But also, you couldn't have an honest relationship with your parents, presumably, because if you called up, they were, you know, spoke to them in Czechoslovakia, they were very mindful that the authorities would be...
Yeah, we could hear the clicks on the phone when we were talking, but we spoke maybe every 3-4 weeks.
Who were the clicks?
Clicks. Oh, well, they were listening in, you know. But we weren't talking political stuff. It was just, you know, how are you playing? How is it feeling? It was just normal conversations, but we were cracking up. I'm like, can you hear me okay?
America embraced Navratilova, with fans giving her standing ovations at tournaments. And Navratilova would embrace America, making the most of the benefits of capitalism as she sought to fit in. After defecting, she was famous off the court and now sought to become a star on it, her aggressive serve and volley style taking her up the international rankings. The 70s and 80s were a golden era for tennis, the time of Connors, McEnroe and Borg, big personalities.
You cannot be serious!
Of which Navratilova was one.
Why after she made that noise?
But there was one player that kept getting in her way. Chris Evert, the All-American girl next door and world number one, had beaten Navratilova in 20 of their previous 25 meetings. Before they met in the Wimbledon final of 1978.
So by the late 1970s, you're among the best in the world, but at the age of 21, you still hadn't won a major title. But then you embark on this rather famous rivalry. Did you ever think back then that you would spend so much of your life talking about Chris Evert?
Well, of course not. You know, I followed women's tennis. I kind of had a ranking in my head who was who and knew all about Chris. And it was when she said hello to me first time she saw me, I was just happy that she said hello. Fast forward to 1978, my grandmother came to visit, first family member that I could see because she was in a pension, so they would let her go. And when she met Chris, she was so excited. She was more excited to see Chris than me, I think, because Chris was such a superstar.
But it was Navratilova's moment to shine.
The brilliant smash from around the service line.
Okay. Yes, wonderful judgment again.
They were a set apiece going into the final set, and some commentators had questioned if she could master her emotions enough to win a Grand Slam title.
And Martina is really finding Chris Evert in high form here.
Navratilova answered with a resounding yes.
That's it. That's it. And a truly wonderful victory for Martina.
I mean, that 1978 win at 21, what did that feel like? Must have been extraordinary.
Well, you know, I stayed at the Inn on the Park, drove myself to the courts, and afterwards, you know, the hotel sent me all the newspapers. So I'm reading and it was so sweet. And I'm like, oh, the world's going to come to a stop and say, wow, Martina Navratilova won Wimbledon. Nobody gave a shit. And most of all, I couldn't even celebrate it with my family. I mean, I found out after the match that they watched it on TV, but, you know, that was very bittersweet because my dad spent thousands and thousands of hours on the court with me and then traveling to little tournaments here and there. And then we couldn't share it because he couldn't get out of the country. And not only, you know, So I didn't even know if they watched it, but they ended up having seen it. So it was bittersweet. But, life didn't really change that much for me.
You got to see your mum the following year, 1979, when I think an intervention by the Duchess of Kent.
Yeah, she helped for her to get the visa because the Czechs didn't let people, once you were in pension, then they were happy if you defected because that means they don't have to pay your pension money. So it was all about money for them, nothing else. And
but that must have been a wonderful reunion.
So they let my mom out, and it was. I'm surprised that I was able to play as well as I did and actually win and share it with her. But that was magic, the fact that she was there.
Mrs. Navratilova, welcome to Britain. What are your impressions now of this country and of this tournament so far?
It's very nice here, but I'm very glad to see my daughter.
Over the coming years, Navratilova would go on to dominate the sport and get the better of her great rival Evert. Their battles were legendary and at times hostile.
Nancy Lieberman, the basketball player, told you to stop being friends with Evert. I wonder if that was good advice, and also more broadly whether or not you can actually have friends in elite sports, or whether if you want to be a champion, if you want to be the greatest, enemies are more useful.
You can be friends, and I grew up that way. You respect your opponents. You still want to beat them. You still give everything you have, but you can still have a beer afterwards or go out to dinner. So, Nancy was trying to instill this hatred in me, and Chris was my carrot. But it wasn't that personal, but it was more of an incentive to work harder and work on my game. It got frosty for a little bit, but then I think we made up, and we never lost that respect for each other and empathy for each other.
Navratilova won 43 of their 80 matches and ended up spending a total of 332 weeks as world #1. A feat achieved not just through talent. Her focus on strength elevated her game and set a new standard for women's athleticism in the world of tennis.
How conscious were you of being a different player, in being hitting the ball harder, being more athletic? And did you try to make that a point of difference? Did you consciously try to be someone who is physically better and stronger than the other players?
Well, I didn't really get into shape until 81, when Nancy Lieberman said, you could be in much better shape. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's when I really started training. But I felt I was a better athlete than anybody else, that I was faster, that I was stronger. Not necessarily fitter, but as fit as anybody else, because we just kind of played tennis. We didn't do much outside of tennis, outside training. And then when I did that, then everything took off. But most of all, I think my career took off because I got a coach. Because the first 6 years after I defected, I didn't have a coach. I was all alone. I just kind of winged it by myself. So that's when things really turned around. But I always knew I was a better athlete than most anybody else.
So these were 2 points of difference, because you got known as the bionic woman, you went to the gym, you trained hard, and you got a coach. But there was also, I looked at the headlines from that period, and maybe you avoided them, but there was an undertone to the coverage about femininity, what it is to be a woman. Did you feel some of that was pretty nasty? You're smiling now, but I mean, some of it was pretty nasty.
Look, it still is. Women are still judged by a different metric than men, and certainly judged by a different metric when they do something wrong. Even example, very simple example. Oh, you're so competitive, saying to me. I'm like, what? Am I supposed to go on the court and try to lose or something? What is wrong with that? Would they say the same way to Rafa Nadal? Oh my God, you are such an amazing competitor. Same quality, viewed completely differently, because one is a male, one is a female. So, women are used to that, and it happens on a daily basis. It's just part of the deal. I think men just don't realize how much women have to deal with on a daily basis. Parenting, the women are automatically slated to be the caretakers, and they still have a job. When guys are heroes for doing the same thing, but anyway. So the femininity thing, I was kind of jealous of women that looked more feminine, but there's nothing I can do about what I look like, who I am, how I act. So if people were uncomfortable with it, I've always figured it's their problem, not mine. But it hurt. Yeah, it hurt.
But you were perhaps the most famous female athlete in the world, or certainly one of them at this point, and you were also publicly harbouring a secret which went to your very core, which was about your sexuality. What was it like living with that secret whilst being so famous?
Well, I didn't think there was anything wrong with being gay, but there was something wrong with it in the eyes of the public, or certainly the media. And I couldn't come out until after I got my citizenship. To get your citizenship, the final interview, if they ask you, are you homosexual, and you have to, you're under oath, and so hopefully you say yes. And then if that person, usually a man, thinks it's a problem, then they can deny your citizenship based on that. So I couldn't come out when I was still, before I got my citizenship. So that's why it was kind of a secret, but, you know, the tour, everybody knew who was gay, who was straight. Nobody cared.
It came out around the same time, just 3 months after Billie Jean King,
Right.
who I also spoke to for this series. Just tell us a story of how were you outed?
Well, Billie Jean was outed by her ex-girlfriend, and then became massive news.
I've always felt it's very important that people have their privacy. And unfortunately, someone in my life doesn't think it's very sacred.
I had told the people at the WTA that I was going to come out once I got my citizenship. And they literally told me, don't come out now, because the sponsors told us if there's another scandal like Billie Jean, we're going to pull out our sponsorship of the tour. Meantime, there had been a reporter that wanted to talk to me about my sexuality. I said, I can't talk about it until I get my citizenship. So I got my citizenship in July of 1981. And he comes and he calls me. I was in Monaco. He calls me and says, so are you ready to talk about it? I'm like, I can't because. And I told him why. He says, okay, I won't. And then 2 days later, it's in the paper. So literally saying that I didn't want to come out because it would hurt the tour.
That was the story.
So that was the story. And I was relieved because I didn't want to be lying or not have to talk about it, because I never felt ashamed or that I wanted to hide it.
What did coming out cost you, not in terms of, not financially, but emotionally, in terms of support from the fans? I mean, this is a different world. This is a 1980s America. How did the fans react?
Initially, they didn't care, and I got a big applause at the US Open when I lost to Tracy Austin. They kept applauding. And I was like, wow, they really are accepting me as me. So it felt great. But then when I started winning a lot, I think the gay thing was a minus, and it was difficult to deal with.
That must have been horrible.
The media, you know, I mean, in UK with the tabloids, you know, they had cameras on my house because I stayed at Wimbledon. They had cameras. I had to have the curtains closed all the time because they were right across the street. They were into the house across the street from me, so they could snap photos with me and whoever I was with. So, you know, the Love Den, or Love Shack, whatever. No, it's my home. Anyhow.
You mentioned the double standards that still are in place today. Is it easier now, do you think, for players to come out, or are there players, maybe players that you even know, who still don't feel able to be themselves and true to their sexuality on the tour?
There's still a bunch. There's some women that have not come out.
So you know of some women who are sort of big names who still don't feel that they can come out?
You know, it's still a minus for so many. And quite frankly, it's nobody's business. You don't have to announce it. These days, gay rights, I mean, people in at least in the democracies around the world have this equal rights. So there's really no reason to come out. Straight people don't have to come out. I'm straight. So it's nice that it's a non-issue for the most part, but it can still be a shameful thing for some and a big minus in some countries. So it's just easier to not come out. But, you know, to each his own.
It was not Navratilova's sexuality, but her tennis that would come to define her. And the figures are staggering. 59 Grand Slam titles, 167 career singles titles, and the only person in the history of Wimbledon, man or woman, to win the singles 9 times, a feat she achieved in 1990 against Zina Garrison.
Yes, it's out. She's done it. Navratilova, the champion for the 9th time.
Navratilova retired from singles in 1994 and from doubles in 2006, before her next chapter began as a commentator. It was a tennis career that saw her claim more than $20 million in prize money. But should it have been more?
What's the biggest challenge facing women in tennis today?
It's still trying to get the corporate money, because we still are lacking and lagging behind the guys in financials. You know, the guys get bigger contracts from whoever, the sponsor of the tour, the co-sponsors, the car companies, whoever the sponsors are. Male athletes still get more than female athletes for the most part, and certainly the tour, it's a lot easier for the guys to get the money. So we have to work hard to get our sponsors and keep them happy. And it still is it's still a much bigger battle for us than for the guys.
Their argument on fair pay, which you've heard a billion times, I'm sure, I put this to Billie Jean King, is that they should get, some men who advocate this position, not all the men on tour advocate the position, but some say they should get a bigger share of media rights money because they drive bigger audiences both on TV and in court. What do you say to that?
Well, number one, the majors are big because both men and women play together. Also, some people say, oh, we don't play 3 out of 5. Well, we volunteer to play 3 out of 5, but they don't want us to do that. So you can use that as an argument versus equal prize money in the majors. And also, men's sports has been around for 150 years. Women's sports is very young. Title IX is only 52 years ago that women athletes in America got the same rights as male athletes in college sports, which kind of started the whole sports revolution in America for women. And it's just the right thing to do. You know.
We'll talk about the right thing to do. I want to get your views on trans athletes in sports. You have been very outspoken. So just looking at your social media on Twitter and elsewhere, you said so. For instance, you said, it's not for failed male athletes, whatever age. This is not right and it's not fair. This to you is a question of morality, isn't it? It's about justice. And as you cast it, it's about being fair to women who are participating.
Absolutely. I mean, the girls that come out, they've been working just as hard as the boys. They have a dream. And that there's a certain step ladder that you have to go through before you get to elite sports. So it starts really in high school, and then you come out to go into your local meet, and there's a boy that now has a ponytail and nail polish and identifies as a girl. That's all fine and well, but the ponytail and nail polish does not a female make. And now these girls are like, I can't compete against that. I have no chance.
What do you think about where tennis has got to? Because the WTA permits transgender women to participate if A, they provide a written and signed declaration that they are female or non-binary, B, their testosterone levels are below a certain limit for 2 years, and C, they sustain those levels. What do you think about that position that the WTA has got to?
I think it's wrong. I think it's still wrong because, number one, you don't lose the 5 inches of built-in height. Average male is 5 inches taller than a female. Then you add arm length, you got like 7 inches. You got this much height just here. So I have to jump this much higher for an overhead as the guy, identifies as a woman, to be on the same level. There have been studies that have shown that even after 15 years of hormone therapy, male bodies still had 20% advantage over female bodies. That's massive in sports. You cannot compete with that. So it takes me 20% more to hit the ball just as hard as you. Massive advantage. You can't take that away.
That research, conducted by a university in Brazil, was based on a sample of 42 non-athletes. In 2021, the UK Sports Councils looked at multiple studies and also concluded that despite suppressing testosterone, trans women still have an advantage over biological females in some sports. But other researchers suggested trans athletes are in some ways at a physical disadvantage. And the arguments over fairness versus inclusion continue throughout the world.
The Lawn Tennis Association in the UK says it's got to manage or balance potentially conflicting responsibilities. On the one hand, the need to ensure competition is fair, but on the other, a responsibility to make sure tennis is welcoming and inclusive for everyone.
Yeah.
And you know what it feels like
It still is.
But you know what it feels like to be in a minority and to be ostracised. You've faced public persecution. Do you worry that the consequences of your being outspoken on this subject might lead other people who are trans, who are in a minority, to be ostracised or bullied?
There should be no ostracization or bullying, but male bodies need to play in male sports. They can still compete. There is no ban on trans women in sports. They just need to compete in the proper category, which is the male category. It's that simple. And welcome them, and everybody gets a chance. But by including male bodies in the women's tournament, now somebody is not getting into the tournament. A woman is not getting into the tournament because now a male has taken her place.
Recently in the UK, the Supreme Court ruled that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex. Is your message to the world of tennis that they should follow the lead of the UK Supreme Court and be that clear and that definitive?
100%. I think sports has always been on the front of social change and social progress. And this way, we can be on it again in affirming the right of women and girls to sex-based spaces.
Let me just
and being in the right side of history.
Let me just push back for one moment on what you
Okay.
say, because a lot of people would say that if someone with your authority, pedigree, championship status is so outspoken, they can understand why you might feel very strongly about this as a moral question. But one consequence of your taking those views might be that people who are trans, who've been through terrible experiences many times, will face more public persecution. And they're already terribly persecuted. And that actually we should all, including you, spend a bit more time being sympathetic to what people who've gone through that process, who've transitioned, are experiencing.
Very sympathetic, but that still doesn't give him right into women's sex-based spaces. What about the women? What about the girls? And every athlete affects every girl on that pitch, on that playing field.
Today, Navratilova is married to Russian businesswoman Julia Lemegova and still lives in America. But the land of opportunity she was so keen to embrace is not the one she knew when she defected 50 years ago.
The other subject on which you've been very outspoken of late is your adopted homeland of modern America. And I note that on your pinned tweet on the platform X, you say that you grew up in a totalitarian, authoritarian country, which we've spoken about, Czechoslovakia, under the Soviet Union. And basically you say you refuse to be someone who lives in another one. Do you really fear America, your home, is turning into a totalitarian, authoritarian country?
Don't you see that? I mean...
Totalitarian?
Well, yeah. When they are checking your all your social posts to decide whether you can stay in the country, even though you already have legal visa, and they want to send you back. When they're checking people out because... even though they're doing everything they possibly can to become citizens, and they go for their immigration meeting with the officer, they have a schedule they need to show up so they can proceed with their green card, etc. They take them out of the country, people that have lived here legally for 5, 6, 7 years, trying to do... We made it so difficult for people to get legal status, immigration status in America, and then we complain about illegal immigrants because we make it almost impossible. And then the people that have done it by the book, they still get chucked out. What is not totalitarian about that?
Well, and people should know you were an asylum seeker to America.
And I got it immediately because I came from a communist country, so it was automatic.
Do you fear America is turning against migrants?
Well, definitely turning against migrants, turning against anybody that's, people are getting chucked out of the Homeland Security. They're getting chucked out because they're not on board completely with Donald Trump's agenda.
What would happen to a
Which
young
are
Martina?
not political appointments, but they still get chucked out because they're not, not kissing the ring.
So what would happen to a young Martina today, someone who dreamed of America?
I would not be able to get, they wouldn't let me in, probably, because I'm not loyal to Donald Trump. I guess. I don't know what would happen to me, but I would, if I was now still in that same position and I had to go live somewhere, it would not be America because it's not a democracy at the moment. It's the frog in the boiling water syndrome, and people are not paying attention. They think, it's, I'm all right, Jack, it's not going to affect me. And guess what? People that voted for Trump are getting, their family members are getting chucked out.
I wonder if it might affect you. I mean, you now have dual US and Czech citizenship. under Donald Trump, have you wondered if your own US citizenship could be at risk?
He cannot take it away, although the way he's going, we might get to that point. Everything is up in the air right now, and that's the whole point. Everybody's walking on eggshells, not knowing what's going to happen. Everybody's in fear, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all.
You say that a young person might not want to go to America, but just before we turn to some quick-fire questions, I do want to ask you about parenthood, because when you went through cancer the second time, am I right in saying that you were about to embark on adoption, but you had to hold off because of the cancer?
Yeah.
But now you have adopted 2 boys? Mm-hmm. How's it going?
Well, it's not legal yet, so yeah, it's going. It's been a challenge, but it's been amazing. They're fun.
Do you like having young kids?
Well, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, but again, they're not quite ours yet, but it's just a matter of paperwork now. But it's a challenge, but they're amazing.
Don't you feel like you're doing life in reverse?
Absolutely. I've never done anything by the book, so why start now? I know I'm too old for this. I should be a grandparent, not a parent, but, that's how it worked out, and we're lucky for it. They're lucky they don't know it yet, but, yeah, it's going to be fun.
Some quick fire questions. Maximum 10 words, minimum 1. What time do you wake up in the morning?
8.
Meditation or treadmill?
A little bit of both.
How long do you use social media for each day?
Probably an hour.
What's your favourite meal?
Oh, roast duck, dumplings, and sauerkraut. It's a typical Czech meal.
I didn't see that coming. What's your worst habit?
Worst habit? Picking, playing, always having to do something. And playing cards while watching a TV show.
When have you been most scared?
Most scared? I think when I defected. Yeah.
When did you last cry?
And 2 years ago when I got the diagnosis that the cancer could be anywhere. Yeah. For 3 days.
When did you last cry?
Oh God, probably yesterday.
Do you believe in God?
I believe in a higher power, but I call myself an agneist. Half atheist, half agnostic.
Okay. What does it take to be the best there's ever been at something?
Passion.
How much of it's natural talent and how much of it's hard work?
It's all a combination. You need all of it. Usually the ones that have the talent work less. The ones that have more that have less talent work harder, and the ones that had a lot of talent, they get a bit lazy. But when you get the combination of the two, a lot of talent and a lot of passion and hard work, that's when you get champions.
Have you got any regrets?
I regret that I had to do what I had to do, leaving my family. I wish I could have taken them with me. No.
You can't regret something that you can't control, can you?
Timing sucked, yeah. I mean, the revolution came 14 years too late for me.
How would you like to be remembered in years to come?
I'd like to be remembered.
Martina Navratilova, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Floating like a seagull's wings, wrap your arms around each other passionately. 我是问吃苹果啊。 Thế sao nó bắt được bố?
Ma thì bằng người, người tạo hình. Ma thì bằng người nữa, ma lại tạo hình. Thì mình phải thấy có ma đâu, ma xuất hiện ở đấy. Mình sẽ không thấy.
Thế mẹ đang làm gì ấy?